What is up, guys? MCMMA here, and in today's video I am going to be doing my breakdown and picks for UFC 323 Dvalishvili versus Jan 2, which is also the last pay-per-view ever. You know, somewhat of a sad day maybe for some, I guess the UFC executives, a happy day for many like us. But this is a very good card. Two title fights headlining it, a lot of good matchups, a lot of my favorite fighters on here too. And yeah, I'm excited for this one. So let's get right into these picks. First fight of the night, we have got a featherweight bout between Muhammad Naimov and Myron Santos. Muhammad Naimov is coming off of a win against Bogdan Grad most recently, who, as some of you know, just got knocked out by Luke Riley at UFC Qatar. Santos, on the other hand, is coming off of a win against Sadiq Youssef, that fight was at lightweight, actually. I'm not really sure what his plan is long term in terms of whether he's going to stick around at featherweight or go back up to lightweight. But that was a pretty solid win for him. This is a really good matchup, especially for it being the first fight of the night. These guys are both pretty solid fighters. I am going to pick Myron Santos here, though. I do think he has shown more. I think he's beat the better competition, especially with his most recent win over Sadiq Youssef. So I'm going to be going with Myron Santos by decision in this one. All right, next up, we have got a middleweight bout between Mansour Abdul Malik and Antonio Trocoli. Abdul Malik is undefeated. His most recent bout against, I don't even remember who his most recent fight was against, to be totally honest. But I do remember that he fought Cody Brundage earlier this year, and that fight, I think it was like a technical draw, was what it ended up being. He had fouled Brundage like at the start of the third round, so they just scored it based off the first two. And Trocoli, I think his last fight was against Tresean Gore, if I'm not mistaken. But this one's not going to be close. Even though I don't think that highly of Mansour Abdul Malik, even though he's undefeated, I really don't think he's that good of a prospect. But Antonio Trocoli is one of the worst fighters in the entire UFC. I'm honestly shocked that he's getting another UFC fight. I guess they're probably just trying to give Abdul Malik another easy win, but he's going to win this fight with ease. And like I said, Trocoli is a horrible fighter. So I am going to pick Mansour Abdul Malik by knockout here, and I think he's going to get it done very easily. All right, next up, we have got Iwo Baraniewski taking on Ibo Aslan. This is Baraniewski's UFC debut. If some of you remember, he fought on the Contender Series not too long ago, and he beat Muhammad Ali, who was like the big hyped up prospect on that week's card, and Baraniewski, I think that's how you say it, knocked him out in like 30 seconds. So that one was a super impressive performance. Ibo Aslan is coming off of two very underwhelming losses, especially the most recent one. He's lost to Ion Cutelaba and Billy Alicana, and especially the Billy Alicana fight was just absolutely horrid. He just stood there. They both just stood there staring at each other for 15 minutes. So Aslan was a guy who had some decent momentum even like last year or early this year. He was a guy who some thought was finally going to be like a real problem in the light heavyweight division, since there's not typically a lot of good, or there hasn't been a lot of good prospects in the division in the past few years. But I mean, he has looked horrid in his last few fights. So I am going to be picking Baraniewski here by knockout. I think he's going to continue his momentum from his last fight. And in all honesty, his last opponent, Muhammad Ali, was probably a harder fight than Ibo Aslan at this point. So I am going to go with Baraniewski by knockout here. All right, next up, we have got a lightweight bout in between Edson Barbosa, the vet, and the returning Jalen Turner. Barbosa hasn't fought in a little while. I believe my mistake. He fought at UFC 319 where he lost to Jakar Close. And Jalen Turner obviously retired earlier this year after losing to Ignacio Bahamondes, but to the surprise of basically nobody, he's already come out of his retirement, and he is taking on Edson Barbosa here. Barbosa, as good as he was, he's just so old at this point, and he's not a guy who I really would pick to beat that many opponents at this stage in his career. And even though Jalen Turner he has been on somewhat of a long layoff, he hasn't fought since basically the start of the year. And there's been some questions about his motivation, whether he really wants to fight. He hasn't really looked like himself in his past couple fights against Renato Moicano and Ignacio Bahamondes. But I think that with him coming out of retirement, I'm sure he's more motivated. He wants to get back in there. And I mean, as we know, Jalen Turner is an absolute like physical specimen at lightweight. He's 6'3", got a crazy reach, and at this stage in Barbosa's career, he's just not. I don't see him beating a guy like Jalen Turner. So I am going to be picking Jalen Turner here. I'm going to pick him by knockout, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not able to finish Barbosa. But I think Jalen Turner's going to get this one done. This is a really tough fight to give Edson Barbosa at this stage in his career. I don't know like why the UFC isn't showing him any respect. He's been a legend of the game for a long time. He's a lot of people's favorite fighters. And, I mean, just give him some fucking easy fights at this point. I don't know why you're making him fight a guy like Jalen Turner. But, yeah, I'm going to pick Turner in this one. All right, last fight on the early prelims, we have got Marvin the Orc Vettori taking on Bruno Ferreira. Marvin Vettori has not won a fight in a very long time. He's coming off of a couple losses this year. He lost at the start of the year to Roman Dolidze by decision, and most recently lost to Brendan Allen. And Bruno Ferreira is on a little bit of a roll. He's picked up some good wins over like Dustin Stoltzfus. I forget who his most recent win was against, but he beat RoboCop back in his UFC debut. And he's a guy he's been one of the better unranked middleweights for a few years. Yeah, he beat Jackson McVeigh in his most recent fight. Yeah, he was scheduled to fight Ikram Aliskerov, but Ikram pulled out on very short notice, so he beat Jackson McVeigh. I am kind of surprised that they're giving Bruno a ranked opponent off of his last couple wins since he's beat Armen Petrosyan, who got cut, I'm pretty sure, after he lost that fight, and Jackson McVeigh, who is an absolute scrub. But that's not to say Ferreira isn't good. He's a good fighter. He's got super heavy hands, and he's got a pretty good submission game as well. And at this point in his career, I mean, Marvin Vettori is really just not good at fighting, in my opinion. Like, there's nothing, like, striking-wise, he's not that great. He's not a great grappler. The only reason he really has stuck around this long is just because of how amazing his chin is, and I think Bruno Ferreira is going to get this one done. I'm going to go with Ferreira by decision here since I don't see him finishing Marvin Vettori. I don't think Vettori has ever gotten finished in his UFC career, and I don't think that streak is going to end now, but I think Ferreira is probably just better than him all around. I mean, I feel like there are probably some people who are going to say that Vettori could try and like grapple pretty heavily, but he really hasn't done that since he fought like Israel Adesanya, and even then, it just wasn't a great game plan. Marvin Vettori is not a guy who's ever going to succeed that well being an offensive grappler. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Ferreira in this one, and I think he's going to win this fight by decision. All right, first fight on the prelims. We have got a banger lightweight matchup between Nazim Sadikov and Fares Ziam. Sadikov is coming off of his win over Nicholas Mota at the UFC Baku card. That was an absolutely amazing fight. One of the best rounds I've ever seen, the first round, in my opinion. And yeah, they were trying to get him a ranked opponent. They were trying to get him Renato Moicano, but Moicano didn't want the fight, which, I mean, I can't really blame Moicano for not really wanting to take that fight. But Sadikov is a guy that the UFC is pretty high on. And he is going to be taking on one of the toughest unranked lightweights there is in Fares Ziam. Fares Ziam is on a pretty long win streak at this point. I think he's on a 4 or 5 fight win streak. He's picked up some good wins against like Mike Davis, Matt Favola, and he's a very complete fighter. He's a good striker, good grappler. He doesn't get a ton of finishes, but he's very good at fighting and he's very good at winning. And I think he's just going to be too much for Nazim Sadikov in this fight. I know a lot of people are picking Sadikov, but I think that despite how entertaining he is, he's probably one of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC. He's a bit too susceptible to brawling, and against a guy who's as clean as Fares Ziam, I think Ziam is kind of just going to pick him apart, and I think he's going to win this fight by a pretty clean decision. So give me Fares Ziam, and I think this is, honestly, in my opinion, this is a fairly easy pick. I think Ziam is going to get this one done probably by like a 30-27 or 29-28. And if he wins this fight, he should absolutely be getting a ranked opponent next. So, yeah, I'm excited to see how this one plays out. This one's got pretty decent implications for the lightweight division. Next up, we have got Macy Barber taking on Karine Silva. Barber hasn't fought in forever. I don't even remember who she fought last. I know she was booked to fight Erin Blanchfield at an Apex Fight Night earlier this year, but she had some she missed weight and then she had like a seizure, I think, like in the back right before she was about to walk out. So they had to scrap that fight like right before it was about to happen. And Karine Silva, I'm going to be honest, I don't remember who she fought last either, but this is not a very exciting matchup. Like they're neither one of these fighters is particularly entertaining or enticing. I am going to go with Macy Barber by decision here since I think she's probably just going to get it done. If you guys have ever watched Macy Barber fight, her fights honestly suck. Like they're super boring. She kind of just like smudges people. But it works for the most part. So I think she's going to be able to do that again. And I think she's going to beat Karine Silva by decision. All right, next up, we've got another unranked lightweight banger in between Terrence McKinney and Chris Duncan. Terrence McKinney is on a little bit of a resurgence right now. He most recently beat Slavaklaus by sub. I forget what card that was on, but he subbed him in like the first minute of the fight. And before that, he beat Damir Hasdovich. Chris Duncan is also on a good roll, and he's been beating some pretty quality opponents. He beat Jordan Vucenic at the start of the year in a pretty big upset. That was one that I was definitely surprised by. And then most recently, he beat Mateusz Rambecki in an absolute war. Another result that I was kind of surprised by. And yeah, I think this fight, honestly, I don't think it's too close. I think Chris Duncan is going to get this one done pretty easily. He's just a level ahead of Terrence McKinney. I know McKinney's on a 2-fight win streak, but those are both against like pretty low level lightweights. And Chris Duncan is beating good competition pretty decisively. And I think, honestly, compared to his last two opponents, maybe not Jordan Vucenic, but definitely Mateusz Rambecki, Terrence McKinney is a step down from Mateusz Rambecki. So I think Chris Duncan's going to get this one done pretty easily. And I think he's going to knock Terrence McKinney out in the first round. I mean, we know with Terrence McKinney, it's kill or be killed in the first like 3 minutes of the fight for the most part. So I think in this fight, unfortunately for him, he's going to get killed, and I'm going to go with Chris Duncan by early knockout. All right, last fight on the prelims, we have got another lightweight matchup in between number 13, Grant Dawson, and unranked Manuel Torres. Grant Dawson is on a pretty decent little run right now. He most recently beat Diego Ferreira at UFC, I think it was UFC 311, if I'm not mistaken. But he's he's 11-1 in the UFC. His only loss was obviously that knockout loss to Bobby Green, which I've gone over this before, but that was like probably the worst loss he ever could have had in terms of his career because that one set him back so far. But he is coming back. He has made his way back into the rankings, and if he beats Manuel Torres, hopefully he can start getting some ranked opponents since they've been matching him up against straight unranked guys. But Manuel Torres most recently knocked out Drew Dober at the UFC Mexico City fight night earlier in the year. And before that, he lost to Ignacio Bahamondes at UFC Noche. I think this is going to be a pretty decisive win for Grant Dawson. I think he's going to be able to control Manuel Torres on the ground like he has done so many times. And I see Chris Duncan winning this fight by decision, probably a 30-27, maybe even like a 30-26. I could see him picking up a 10-8 round in this one. And yeah, I hope that Grant Dawson is able to get a finish or at least pick up a really dominant win so he can kind of beat the boring allegations a little bit. Since, I mean, I've said Grant Dawson's a very underrated fighter a lot of times, but you can't deny that he's pretty boring. His style is pretty boring, and hopefully he is able to make a statement in this performance so that more people can finally recognize just how good he is, because I think he's a guy who's kind of gotten screwed a lot in his UFC career, and I hope that he's able to get a big win here to kind of disprove that notion. All right, first fight on the main card, we have got a very interesting light heavyweight bout in between number 5 ranked Jan Blachowicz and number 11 ranked Bogdan Guskov. Jan Blachowicz, his most recent fight was earlier this year at the UFC London fight night. He lost a very close decision to Carlos Ulberg. A lot of people, myself included, initially thought that Blachowicz won that fight, but I don't think that's a decision that you can complain too much about, since it was a boring fight objectively. They kind of just leg kicked each other for 3 rounds, and there wasn't too much of significance that happened in any of the rounds. So I don't think you can really complain about the fight going either way. But that was a disappointing performance. I was super excited for Blachowicz' return since that was his first fight in like a year and a half, maybe even longer. But here he's taking on Bogdan Guskov, who most recently knocked out Nikita Krylov at the I'm pretty sure it was the Saudi Arabia fight night, headlined by Robert Whittaker and Rainer de Ritter. But I am going to be picking Jan Blachowicz by decision in this one. Even though Guskov is a guy who, I mean, he looks scary as hell. He looks like an orc from Lord of the Rings. And he gets a lot of finishes, but I'm still not that sold on him, to be honest. His win, I mean, I know he just knocked out Nikita Krylov, but I mean, Krylov's chin looks pretty gone at this point. He got knocked out by Dominic Reyes earlier in the year, and I think he's pretty washed at this point. And I mean, we saw earlier in the year, Bogdan Guskov struggled against Billy Elikana. Like, that's not a good look. Billy Elikana is not a particularly good fighter, and we've seen Guskov lose to guys like Volkan Oezdemir. I know he beat Ryan Spann, but like, it's Ryan Spann. And I think that, I mean, we've seen in his fights, when he wins fights, he's normally winning them by knockout, and I just don't think he's going to be able to do that against a guy like Jan Blachowicz. I think Jan is going to I think he's going to like kind of batter him with leg kicks while they're on the feet. And I think if Jan wants to, he could probably take this fight to the ground and have a lot of success there. So I just think there's a lot more paths to victory for Jan Blachowicz in this one, and I'm going to pick him to win this fight by decision. Next up, we have got a bantamweight bout between number 10 ranked Henry Cejudo and the unranked Peyton Talbot. When this fight first got announced, not only was I shocked, this was like one of the few matchups at this point where like it just came completely out of nowhere, because most of the time you'll at least hear like some rumors online, but this one came out of nowhere. But when this one first got announced, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the easiest win of Henry Cejudo's life. Talbot can't wrestle. We saw what Raoni Barcelos did to him, and Cejudo's an Olympic wrestler. This should be easy for him, right? But as we've gotten closer to this fight, I'm actually switching my pick, and I am going to be picking Peyton Talbot by decision here. And there's a few reasons for that. First off, Talbot's takedown defense looked very much improved in his most recent fight against Felipe Lima. And Felipe Lima is a guy who he's one of my favorite prospects. I honestly hated to see him lose to Talbot, but he's a pretty good grappler. And Talbot was defending his takedowns pretty easily. And on top of that, even though Cejudo has that wrestling pedigree, in his last fight against Song Yadong, he didn't shoot a single takedown. He spent the entire fight striking, and in a striking battle against Peyton Talbot, Cejudo's not going to win. Talbot's got a huge reach advantage. He's way bigger, and Peyton Talbot is a very good striker. You can think what you want about him in terms of his like personality or the fact that he's been gifted this fight, which he has objectively been gifted this fight. But he's a very good striker, and if this fight plays out on the feet, he's going to have a pretty significant advantage. And the last piece is, do you really think the UFC wants Henry Cejudo to win this fight? Like, no fucking chance. They want Peyton Talbot to win this. And I think because of those combinations of factors, I am going to be picking Peyton Talbot by decision here. I don't think he's going to finish Cejudo. Cejudo's a pretty durable guy. He hasn't gotten finished, and I don't think he's gotten finished since he got knocked out by Mighty Mouse in their first fight, which was like 10 years ago. But I do think Talbot is going to get this one done. I think he's just going to outpoint Henry Cejudo on the feet. And this is a pretty sad way to go out for Henry Cejudo, win or lose. We know he made a super dumb decision retiring at the peak of his career, and he said this is going to be his last fight. So yeah, tough ending for Cejudo, but he is a legend of the sport, one of the few simultaneous double champs in UFC history, and I hope that the UFC will give him the flowers that he deserves, even though Dana doesn't really like him, but he deserves respect, so hopefully they'll give him like a low retirement package or something. But that's besides the point. I'm going to be picking Peyton Talbot by decision here. All right, next up, we have got a super interesting matchup in the flyweight division. We have got number 2 ranked Brandon Moreno taking on number 5 ranked Tatsuro Taira. Moreno is currently on a 2-fight win streak with wins over Amir Albazi and Steve Erceg. He's looked really good in both of those fights, but disclaimer, neither one of those fighters is all that good, to be honest. Those guys are both like below Brandon Moreno's level. And I think the Royval fight, which was his most recent loss, I think that is kind of more around I think it kind of says more about where Moreno's at right now than his most recent wins. Since Moreno's, he's easily a top 5 guy, borderline top 3, but he lost to Royval. I think he would probably lose to Joshua Van. He would obviously lose to Pantoja. And I think he's going to lose to Tatsuro Taira, to be totally honest. Taira, 17-1, only one loss in the UFC, and that was against Brandon Royval. That was like mid last year. Most recently beat Hyung Sung Park on short notice earlier this year. He was supposed to fight Amir Albazi, but Albazi pulled out. And I'm going to go with Taira. I'm going to pick Tatsuro Taira by decision here. Brandon Moreno is definitely the better striker. Like, that's not even up for debate. But Tatsuro Taira's striking looked a lot better in the Hyung Sung Park fight. And, I mean, this dude Taira is an absolutely phenomenal grappler. We saw what he was able to do when he got Brandon Royval to the ground. When he gets guys to the ground, they don't really get up. And especially in a 3-round fight, I think that probably favors Taira. I think he's going to be able to withstand Brandon Moreno's striking. I think that he's not going to get... I mean, obviously Moreno is a better striker, and I think Moreno is going to get the better of him in the striking exchanges, but I don't think Taira is going to get beat up quite as badly as he did against Brandon Royval. And I think that Taira is going to have success taking Brandon Moreno down and controlling him on the ground, and I think he's going to use that to win a decision. But this is a very close fight on paper. I wouldn't be surprised if Brandon Moreno won it, but I am going to pick my boy Tatsuro Taira to win this fight. All right, next up, in the co-main event, in the first title fight of the night, we have got flyweight champion Alexandre Pantoja taking on the number 1 contender Joshua Van. Pantoja most recently beat Kai Kara France at UFC 317. Speaking of Kai Kara France, I don't know what the hell happened to him, but he dropped out of the rankings, and he said he's going to take like a break or something. I don't know if he's like retiring, but pretty weird situation. But that still does not take away from Pantoja's dominance. I think he's at 4 title defenses at this point. One of the most dominant champs in the UFC that we have right now. And he just keeps getting better in every fight. He absolutely dominated Kai Kara France, both on the feet and on the ground, especially on the ground. And he kind of looked like a prime Jose Aldo on the feet, just walking dudes down, chopping at them with leg kicks, and his grappling. I mean, his grappling has always been insane. He's always had the grappling edge against most of his opponents. And Joshua Van, on the other hand, is one of the quickest risers in UFC history. This dude went from unranked at the start of the year to now fighting for the belt at the end of the year. Absolutely insane. He's one of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC. He's like a mini Max Holloway. And his win over Brandon Royval was both super impressive. The fact that he beat a guy as good as Brandon Royval on short notice is insane. And it was also one of the greatest fights I've ever seen in my life. But that being said, I do think Pantoja is going to get this one done, and I do think he's going to get it done fairly easily. He's just so far ahead of Joshua Van grappling-wise, and I know Van has looked amazing in his last few fights. He's been on this meteoric rise to the top of the flyweight division, but Pantoja is going to show him levels, I think, and I think Pantoja is going to dominate him on the ground. Van is probably a better striker, but Pantoja has an iron chin, and I think despite the fact that Van will probably land on him pretty successfully, I think Pantoja is just going to eat the shots, walk Joshua Van down. He's going to take him down, and I think he's going to submit him in the early rounds. So I am going to be picking Alexandre Pantoja by submission here, but I mean, Joshua Van has such a bright future. He's only 20. I think he's 24 years old, just turned 24. He will be a champ at some point, and I think he's going to lose this fight, but this will not stop him. He's going to be back very soon, and I think Pantoja is going to get this one done. But this is going to be an interesting fight. We'll see how good Joshua Van's takedown defense is, and if his takedown defense holds up, it's going to be a tough fight for Alexandre Pantoja. So I'm excited to see this one, but I do think Pantoja is going to win this fight by submission. And last but not least, we have got the main event. Bantamweight champion Merab Dvalishvili is defending his title for the 4th time in a rematch against number 3 ranked Petr Yan. Merab he's notched 3 defenses already this year, looking for his 4th. He beat Umar at the start of the year. Absolutely amazing fight. submitted Sean O'Malley in their rematch, and then beat Corey Sandhagen pretty decisively just a few months ago, almost knocked him out. And Petr Yan is on a 3-fight win streak at the moment with wins over Song Yadong, Davison Figueiredo, and Marcus McGee. As some of you may know, Petr Yan's my favorite fighter in the UFC. I absolutely love the guy, but this is going to be a tough fight to watch, man. I'm going with Merab. I think Merab is going to win this fight pretty easily, and I think he's going to win it by decision. He's just such a bad, he's a bad stylistic matchup for everybody, but especially Petr Yan Yan is probably the worst, he's probably Merab's easiest matchup stylistically, just because of how stationary he is on the feet. He's got the high guard. He doesn't really move around too much on the feet, and that just opens him up for so many takedown attempts. We saw what happened in the first fight. Merab shot, I think it was 49 takedowns, and he was just able to wear on Yan with those, and he was able to use the takedown threat to outstrike him on the feet. And I think it's probably going to go pretty similarly. I do think Yan is going to have more success. I think he could maybe snatch around. Maybe a round or two. Probably not two, but I think he's going to have more success in this fight just because he's seen Merab already. He knows what's coming, because in their first fight, nobody knew that Merab was going to be the monster that he is now. That was the first performance where everyone was like, oh shit, this dude's going to be a future champ, and I don't know how anybody's going to beat him. But now that Yan has already seen that, I do think he's going to, have more success defending takedowns, but I don't think it's going to matter really. Merab's gas tank is 1 of 1, as we know. He's just going to wear him down, and I don't think he's going to get a finish here, since Yan's got an absolute granite chin, but I think Merab's going to win this fight pretty easily. And man, it's going to be hard to watch, dude. I think this is probably Yan's last chance to get the belt back. Given I know he's only 33, but if you've seen his last few performances, he is pretty clearly physically declined. And I don't know how much time he has left, to be totally honest. And Merab, nobody's beating this dude. So this is going to be tough to watch. I love Merab too. Merab's also one of my favorite fighters, but Yan is my favorite fighter, clearly. Yeah, this is going to be a tough watch, but I think Merab is going to win this fight by decision. Probably a 50-45, maybe a 49-46, but I think it's going to be pretty clear. And yeah, that's how we're going to cap off the 2025 UFC calendar. Overall, I think this has been a pretty great year for UFC. I think our current lineup of champions especially is honestly about as good as it's ever been. And yeah, that's what I've got. Those are my breakdown and picks for UFC 323. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with any of my picks. I'm not going to be uploading too much for the next few weeks because I've got finals, and I'm also going to be heading back home at the end of next week. But I will make, obviously, a reaction video for this. I'm going to do a bantamweight matchmaking video after this card, and I plan on doing a flyweight matchmaking vid after the UFC Fight Night Royval versus Manel Cap, because at that point it'll be pretty clear what the flyweight title picture is looking like. But if you guys have any videos that you want me to make, just let me know in the comments, because I don't have too many videos lined up until the year's over. I'm gonna do a ton of end of year videos, but I obviously can't do that until all the cards have happened. So let me know in the comments if there's any videos that you want to see right now. As always, make sure to leave a like on the vid, subscribe to the channel, and thank you guys for watching.